Good evening, everybody. Let's do some shenanigans here. Let's do some shenanigans, yeah? What is up, True Horror Stories Nation? I'm your host, True Horror Stories. Let's get right into the stream! I'm sorry, I had to do that. I'm in a mood tonight. Welcome, everybody. I know it's been a hot freaking minute, but, yeah, life and, work decided it wanted to play games with my entire existence at the moment. So, I've been away and been unable to do a whole lot of anything. Thank you for the $5, Rocket Ruin. I really appreciate it. Missed you guys, too. Is the, there it is. There's the stream stuff. There's one more thing I'm gonna edit. Because I did something kind of fun, and I think you guys are gonna like this. I'm playing around with different stream things, and I'm curious if you guys would like this. So, before I get into the fun, I'm gonna show you a little thing I've been working on. But I gotta get into Streamlabs first. I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy this. This is on the higher scale of donos, and I never expect to ever get it, but I figure I might as well show you what I've been doing, because I think it's fun. I'll make some that are a little bit lower, but this one makes me very, very happy. Alert variations. There it is. Let's do a little test, shall we? That's cool. That's cool. I don't care. That's fucking cool. And I like it. I think that's really cool. That's a 666 donation. It'll never show up. It'll never happen. But, I figured I'd do something freaking fun. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. But, what have I been up to lately? Well, I've been up to a whole heck of a lot, actually. Work's been kicking my butt. Obviously the holidays were going on, and I've been in the midst of trying to get some stream content for you guys, along with slogging my way through, probably the worst movie I've ever seen in my life for a, movie review that was requested by one of my other Patreons. But I figured if I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna come back talking about a fun little poet of my, or one of my favorite poets of all time, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, I love his work, but doing the research for this stream, I found that I absolutely despise who he is as a person. So, I'm pretty sure some of you guys aren't as aware of his background as a lot of people. I definitely wasn't, and I have his entire work of fiction. Or works, or whatever, however you want to fucking put it. But yeah, let's talk about Edgar Allan Poe. The writer of The Raven and The Telltale Heart. You've seen his stuff in a lot of different bits of pop culture, especially Alfred Hitchcock movies. Probably seen him talked about, I don't know, in a bunch of the Simpsons episodes. They're Halloween specials. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Simpsons, so I haven't seen a whole lot of them, but why don't we give you a little bit more background on Mr. Edgar Allan Poe and his interesting life, shall we? Now, to start out, talk about where he was born and his early life. He was born in Boston, Massachusetts on January 19th in 1809 to an English-born actress, Elizabeth Arnold Hopkins Poe, and an actor, David Poe Jr. Now, it's fun how his parents met, although his dad is a complete and utter turdwad. They met while working an iteration of William Shakespeare's King Lear in 1809. And they actually did name Edgar after one of the characters in this particular play. Pretty cool. His grandfather, obviously his mother was an English-born, so his grandfather immigrated with his mother from England. His name was William Henry Leonard Poe. Or no, I'm sorry, that's not correct. That's his brother's name. But his grandfather was David Poe Sr. and came from County Cavan, Ireland in 1750-ish. Poe was the middle child of three, his older brother being William Henry Leonard Poe, which I named earlier incorrectly, and his younger sister was Rosalie Poe. Now, unfortunately, the kids didn't get to spend a ton of time with their family, seeing as a year later, their father decided to up and leave, and their mother died that next year in 1811 from pulmonary tuberculosis, or what at the time was called consumption. If you've heard about the tuberculosis scares, that stuff is not fun to have. Dying from tuberculosis or consumption is not fun whatsoever. It's a painful death. You're basically coughing up blood. Your lungs fill with blood to the point where you basically suffocate on your own blood. Yeah, that's not fun. Once they both died, Poe and his brother and sister were taken into the home of a very successful merchant from Richmond, Virginia named John Allan, which is where he got the name Edgar Allan Poe. He wasn't officially adopted, but he was technically fostered by this family, along with the two other children. So the three of them were adopted. He was officially baptized into the Episcopal Church in 1812. And unfortunately, if you know how religious people were in that time, they were extremely strict. And so, though his adoptive father loved the children and spoiled them all the time, he also beat the living crap out of them when they were bad. Fun times, yes. In 1815, the family took a trip and sailed to move to the United Kingdom, where Poe had eventually started to go to school at the Irvine North Ayrshire in Scotland, which is where Allan was born, funnily enough. He was there for a short time from 1815 until 1816, where he moved with his family to London and started studying at the boarding school in Chelsea until the summer of 1817. After that, he was then entered at the Reverend John Bransby's Manor House School in Stoke Newington, and went to school there until 1820, when he was moved back with his family to Richmond, Virginia. After that, in about 1824, he, interestingly enough, ended up being the lieutenant of the Youth honor guard in Richmond when the Marquis de Lafayette visited in that year. It was a little interesting fact I wasn't aware of. They came into a lot of money, not like they weren't already rich to begin with, but they ended up coming into a lot of money in March of 1825 when Edgar's adoptive great uncle, William Galt, who was also a business benefactor for the Allen family, passed away and left him a massive estate. This estate included several acres of land and an inheritance of $750,000. That's in 1800s money. Now, $750,000 in that time is the equivalent of $17 million in 2020. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And with that money, in the summer of 1825, Allen decided to have a little fun and buy a 2-story brick house that was eventually called Moldavia. Poe, at this point in time, started to find love, to find his place when it came to, you know, the fairer sex, and was engaged for the first time to a woman named Sarah Elmira Royster before he decided he wanted to go to school at the University of Virginia in February 1826. There, he was trying to study ancient and modern languages, but that did not go very well. The reason for this is because back in that time, the university was in its infancy. It was basically a baby university. It hadn't been around for very long. But yeah, that turned out to have a lot of repercussions, and in that infancy, it had a lot of really weird systems of chaos with a high dropout rate, and Poe ended up being part of that dropout rate. Unfortunately enough, he also got screwed over in his love life because he lost touch with Royster, and once he dropped out, he basically found out she'd married another dude. Yeah. That's fun. He actually ended up dropping out for a lot of reasons, and part of that is because, well, he was not a very good student. Another reason is he had a huge gambling addiction. And because of that gambling addiction, he not only lost his girlfriend, but he lost touch with his adoptive father because of his debts. The debts became so damn bad that he couldn't pay for his classes, he couldn't pay for the materials to take these classes, and he couldn't purchase any kind of dormitory or furnishings to stay in while he was studying. Unfortunately, that resulted in him just being like, I can't do this anymore, I'm leaving. And he decided he was gonna go off to Boston in April 1827. When he was in Boston, he did a bunch of odd jobs as a clerk and a newspaper writer. He started to write under the pseudonym Henry Lee Rennet. But in May, he decided to do something very different. And I'm gonna take a pause and say hello to everybody before I get into that. So in the chat, we've got lots of fun people. We have Rocket Ruin, obviously, my wonderful channel member and donator, for the $5 earlier. We've got RBF, my good friend. We've got other channel members, member Yo Miguel C. We've got Speedy Door, we got Oracle, we got Plishman. I hope y'all are doing pretty good. I know it's been a hot minute since I've said hi to anybody or been on live stream, and I wouldn't be shocked if we didn't get a lot of people in here because everybody else is streaming. Is what it is, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done today, so put a late stream up and see where it goes. If anybody wants to watch, they can watch it on the playback. Aw, thank you for the $5 again, Rock and Ruin. I really appreciate it. Much appreciate it. Love you too. I'm glad to be back though. It's been a hot minute and I've wanted to do something. I've just been so out of it. Look at Rock and Ruin helping out the people. Good on you for helping for being a channel member for Miguel C. Hopefully Miguel C will put out some more content too, so you can say hello to him and do that. But now that we've said hello to everybody, had some pleasantries, why don't we get into more fun stuff and more reasons why Edgar Allan Poe as a person was terrible. In May 7th, on May 7th, 27th, 1827. Damn, I can't even talk today. What is happening? He decided he was going to enlist in the United States Army as a private under a different name. He went under the name Edgar A. Perry for this. Said he was 22 years old when he was actually 18. And ended up serving at his first station in Fort Independence in the Boston Harbor for a whopping $5 a month. That's not a lot by our standards, let me tell you, because I make quite a bit much more than that in an hour at work. I make about close to 6 times that in an hour at work. So yeah. Yeah. Same year, he actually released his first bit of poetry. And that was a 40-page collection of poetry that went by the title of Tamerlane and Other Poems. Of course, he, didn't really want anybody to know his name. He was going under a different name in the military to begin with. So I would not be surprised, or I am not surprised that he decided to, go under by a Bostonian, in this particular one. This one didn't get really any attention, and only 50 copies were printed. But once that was done, he was doing his thing with the military. He ended up being posted to Fort Moultrie in Charleston, South Carolina, and ended up traveling by ship on the with brig Waltham on the 8th of November in 1927. What? Hi, Zarius Sin. Thank you for the $5 and the little creepy eyes. I appreciate it. He ended up doing really well at this point, and he ended up becoming an artificer, which is basically like a tradesman that prepared artillery shells. And his pay doubled. He was making $10 a month. Woo. That's a lots of money, guys. He did this for about 2 years, and while he was doing this, did so well that he ended up becoming the Sergeant Major of Artillery, which was the highest rank a non-commissioned officer could achieve at this point. Obviously, the ranking or title and ranks people have are completely different, because the Sergeant Major is still a rank, but Sergeant Major of Artillery, or for Artillery, is I think it's classified a little bit different. It is quite a rank. Sergeant Major is a very high rank, and to do it in 2 years, that's almost unheard of. Most Sergeant Majors that I knew in the military were 20-plus year veterans, so that says something about the times that he was serving in. Even though he was doing so well, he wanted out, and he decided he was going to talk to his lieutenant, who happened to be Lieutenant Howard at the time, and said, "Hey, this is my real name. I lied when I signed up. That's not my real name. That's not my real age, and I want to leave so that I can go and attend West Point in New York." If you've ever heard of West Point, that's where the big brains for Officers Corps go to. If you want to go the education route of things, it's like big boy ROTC. So he was told by his lieutenant that the only way that he could do that is if he reconciled with his adoptive father, Alan. And he tried over and over for a while to write letters to his adoptive father, Alan, to get this reconciliation so he can get his discharge and not serve the entirety of his 5-year enlistment. And didn't get any response. It took a lot of time for that to go through, because he didn't get anywhere until February 28th, 1829, when his adoptive mother, Frances Allen, passed away. Only reason that he was able to reconcile with his adoptive father is because, well, he felt bad saying that they couldn't reconcile, or trying to be standoffish towards Poe while at a funeral. Like, that doesn't look good. You usually kind of feel bad if, you know, your adoptive son comes to you while you're mourning the death of his adoptive mother, and yeah, that it wouldn't have gone well if he'd just blown him off. So they reconciled, and he was discharged and appointed to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Again, big boy school. This became official April 15th, 1829, and yeah, they got a replacement for him and let him go. But things start to get weird. He moved to Baltimore for a little bit and stayed with his widowed aunt, Maria Clem, her daughter, his cousin, Virginia Eliza Clem, who was very, very young at this point, and his brother Henry, along with his grandmother, Elizabeth Karen Poe. But in September, he put out his second book. This one was called Al Araf, Tamerlane and Minor Poems, which was published in Baltimore that same year, and got his first bit of praise, which really pushed him towards the route of getting more stuff out there. This bit of praise was from a very well-known critic, John Neal, and Poe would later go on to say that these are quote-unquote the very first words of encouragement I ever remember to have heard. That's fucking sad. I'm not gonna lie, that's really sad. Unfortunately. Things only got worse at this point, though, because once he went to West Point and became a cadet on the 1st of July in 1830, he spent his time there, and then in October the same year, everything spiraled out of control because his adoptive father married his second wife, Louisa Patterson. And Louisa Patterson didn't like that he had children out of wedlock, which turned into a lot of fights. And those fights ended up leading to Poe being disowned by his foster family. This resulted in him going and spiraling even more and going AWOL. If you don't know what AWOL means, it means that you are dipping out and you are officially, you're gonna get arrested. That's illegal. Going AWOL is very much illegal. And they went after him. They eventually got a hold of him, and he was court-martialed February 8th, 1831, where he was tried for he was tried for, quote, gross neglect of duty and disobedience of orders for refusing to attend formations, classes, or church. Now, church isn't a requirement in the military nowadays, but back then, being a very religious country, that was a problem. He, being the somehow genius that he is, decided, I'm going to tactically say I'm not guilty and make them dismiss this. Because he knew he was going to be found guilty to begin with. Got lucky, and he was right. Completely dismissed all of the charges. And he was basically let back in at that point, or just let go. He ended up going to New York in February 1831 and wrote his third volume of poems under a very inventive title. He titled the book Poems. That's literally it. He just called it Poems. This one, I think, meant a little bit more, though, because that book was completely financed by his fellow cadets in West Point, all of which donated 75 cents a person for a total of a whopping $170. Remember, back in that time, that was a lot of money, guys. That was a lot of money back in that time. And, yeah. Ended up printing that one out of, or it was printed by Elam Bliss of New York and was labeled as a second edition. And it ended up saying, to the U.S. Corps of Cadets, this volume is respectfully dedicated. How nice of him. Again, this had a lot of reprinted poems like Tamerlane and El Araf, but there were 6 previously unpublished poems in there, including verses of To Helen, Israel, and The City by the Sea. After this point, he went back to Baltimore with his aunt, brother, and cousin in March, and unfortunately, he would lose his older brother due to alcoholism and the results of being an alcoholic in August of 1831. It just gets worse, guys. It really does. I mean, you have to think. Somebody who writes so many good bits of poetry has to have had a terrible, terrible life. Or been in some really, really dark places. Have a good night, Rock and Ruin. Thank you for stopping by, and thank you for the donations. It's really appreciated. After his brother died, he put more of himself into writing, and that's where he shined. Interestingly enough, he was one of the first Americans to do this. Basically, like the first YouTubers that would completely live off of what they do on YouTube. He was the first to do so with writing. And unfortunately, that was hampered a lot by there being no international copyright law. Because of that, it just made it really difficult for anybody to just throw their works out into different markets. And they would just make their own unauthorized copies of these books so they didn't have to pay for anybody else's work. Shitty, I know, but yeah. But it just somehow he survived. And mostly that was because he would humiliate himself by begging for money and help. He kind of, at first, started to do a lot of prose when it came to his writing, pretty much because he was enamored with John Neal, the guy who gave him the good critique. His teachings and writings through the Yankee magazine. He would throw his stuff out there in different publications like Philadelphia, and made his only drama called The Politician. Somehow, that spiraled into his first award from the Baltimore Saturday Visitor that was given to him on October 1833 for his short story MS Found in a Bottle. I don't know what that means exactly, but it's one of his first works. And that brought the attention of John P. Kennedy, who had a lot of means to help him place of his stories, and introduced him to a very well-known editor named Thomas W. White that also worked as an editor for the Southern Liberty Messenger in Richmond. He would assist him frequently throughout the time up until 1835, and then was kicked out from there because he was drunk on the job. Not surprising. I guess drinking runs in the family, it seems. He went back to Baltimore at this point and did probably the worst thing he could possibly do. He married his 13-year-old cousin. Yeah. He married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clem. He was 26. He's twice her age. And he got a license to marry her. In September 1835. That made me shake my head when I found out about that one. I was not aware that Poe was a, nonce. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that word, nonce. Yeesh. He was hired back by Mr. White. But went back to Virginia, or back to Richmond not long after that. With his now wife and her mom, who was his aunt. He stayed to work at the Messenger until January of 1837, and then, would claim that his publishings helped increase circulation of the product significantly. I don't know how that worked, but apparently he claimed that. During this time, he would publish a bunch of poems, book reviews, critiques, and stories in the paper. And during that time, he had his little wedding with Virginia at a Presbyterian church. And had a witness attest falsely that she was 21. Wow. Not a good person. Not a good person at all. I guess for him, his career really started to take off when his novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, was published and widely reviewed in 1838. And after that, the summer after that, he started to become an assistant editor for the Burton's Gentleman magazine. By the time 1839 rolled around, he published The Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, which was basically 2 volumes, and made some money from it, but didn't get a lot of good reviews. He continued to publish stuff in 1840, and decided he was going to start his own journal called The Stylus. Okay. Is this where the fun of the Nintendo 3DS stylus came from? I don't know. Maybe. He tried to get this out there by purchasing ad space in an issue of Philadelphia's Saturday Evening Post, and it never took off. He ended up leaving Burton's after about a year, and then took a position as a writer and co-writer at another successful monthly magazine called Graham's Magazine. Hi, Exotic. Hi, Finn. Glad you guys stopped by and say hello. I appreciate it. He, enjoyed it, apparently. But, didn't stay very long. He, tried to get an administrative position, or he tried to get a position under the President John Tyler administration, saying he was a member of the Whig Party. He then attempted with all of his might to get into the House States Custom House, with the help of apparently the president's son, Robert, who was an acquaintance of Poe's friend at the time, and that never happened because Poe didn't show up. I'm assuming that was because he was drinking his ass off. Yeah. Terrible drunk. Terrible, terrible drunk. He, would then end up having the worst thing possibly happen and noticed his wife, his child wife, I hate saying that, but it's truth. His wife started showing signs of tuberculosis while singing and playing the piano. And that probably freaked him out. Because she only partially recovered from that. She didn't die, but she only partially recovered. And after this, Poe was drinking heavily. During this time, it was where he actually started to come into his own. He, in 1845, would go to publish the arguably most famous poem that he's ever put out, and that's The Raven. And it appeared in the Evening Mirror and was very, very popular. He became a household name because of this, and he made a ton of money off of it. It was published in the American Review of Whig Journal under another pseudonym and was just put out there like crazy. He eventually moved to a cottage in Fordham, New York. That's now the Bronx. And he continued to write there during probably the darkest time in his life, because his wife, Virginia, would pass away on the 30th of January, 1847. Most of this is the reason why Poe would continue to bring up the theme of death, and death being a beautiful woman. Because throughout his life, he would lose the women closest to him. He lost his mother, he lost his first, his mother to tuberculosis, his first fiancée to just happenstance, and now he's lost his wife. Sucks, but it made him so much worse. And in this last stupor of his life, he started to court a fellow poet by the name of Sarah Helen Whitman in Providence, Rhode Island. That failed because of his drinking and erratic behavior, and eventually he returned to Richmond and somehow rekindled things with Sarah Elmira Royster. I don't know how that happened. But he wasn't there very long. Almost a little more than 2 years after the death of his wife, he was found stumbling and delirious in the streets of Baltimore. He was taken to Washington Medical College, but eventually died 4 days later at 5 o'clock in the morning. He wasn't coherent at all and couldn't explain exactly why he was in the condition he was in. I'm assuming because he was drinking himself. Stupid. A.B. Hardhead. I'm getting towards the end of a lot of things. I'm probably going to talk a little bit about his legacy. Some bits and pieces, and then wrap it up. So you're probably right at the end of the story for him. But we'll finish it up, and then I'll probably hop off. But there really wasn't a reason that we can come up with as to necessarily pinpoint why he passed away the way he did. Part of this is because his medical records were lost, including his death certificate. But it's been stipulated to be a multitude of things. It's been speculated to be delirium tremens, which is it's basically a withdrawal from alcohol. People have said it was heart disease, it's said it's epilepsy, syphilis, meningeal inflammation, cholera, carbon monoxide poisoning, rabies, you name it. People have said that that's the possibility, and of course we can't really verify that it actually happened, or exactly he died from, but it's most wildly believed that he died from being way too drunk, and because of his constant drinking, it led to his death. That's what is believed. But there's so much to his legacy and to what he's written. He basically stood the test of time, and we see that all in so many different facets of pop culture. We see him being cited in so many works of pop culture. He's got his own freaking museum. He's got his own society called the Raven Society. His house was basically preserved into a museum, which my husband's gone to. And apparently it's kind of creepy. He's had multitudes of different movies that were made upon his work. And it's really, really interesting. If you go look at all that stuff. Alfred Hitchcock really loved his stuff. And there's a ton of books and other works that have come with him. I highly suggest, if you've never read any of his stuff, I would highly suggest going and looking that stuff up. A lot of it is not very well known, but geez, this guy, he was very talented, and unfortunately, he was very talented because he was severely troubled and more than likely never sober. Great works of art, great works of literature, but a terrible, terrible fucking human being. But that's what we've got when it comes to the life of Edgar Allan Poe. So yeah, that's what I've got. I didn't get to go and research this as much as I'd like because work has completely overruled my life. I have to work from in the morning, early in the day, and then like last night alone I was up until probably 11 o'clock just working. It was a pain in the butt, and unfortunately that's what needs to be done for the hot minute, so it's affected my work when it comes to edited content, and I'm very sorry for that. Tomorrow, though, tomorrow's going to be an interesting stream. Rock and Ruin requested that I go over a particular subject. And that particular subject, you've obviously already seen, because it's, you know, it's scheduled for tomorrow. And that is Richard Huckle, who is the most infamous nonce in British history, if you can believe that. I'm still working on getting that one looked into, but that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow night around the same time, 5 o'clock p.m. I am still working on getting the review for the next movie review out, and hopefully that'll be done very soon. But that's what we've got for tonight. I'll be working to try and get some more content out for you guys. I'm still trying to get out the last review for Dragula Season 1. I did a collab with Reese the Frog. They say Reese the Gay Frog. That's what they go by on Twitter. But we had Reese on to review that Season 1, Episode 3 with myself, RBF, and Kitten. So I'll try to get that one out next week for sure. I apologize again for not getting things out. But I will be doing more, hopefully, in the future. And tomorrow I have a stream still. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and close everything out. And I will see you tomorrow night. Sweet nightmares.